Hey everyone, and welcome back to MakerVibe. In today's video, we're going to take a detailed look at keyword arguments inside of Python. So let's jump right in and get started. Alright, so what are keyword arguments? Keyword arguments, or Kwargs for short, are a way of passing named arguments inside a function. This means that when you call a function, you can specify the name of the parameter and the value that you want to assign to it. Doing this can make your code much more readable for others because it is perfectly clear to them which value is being assigned to which parameter. Let's jump into Python and see how this works with an example. Okay, so I'm going to define a function that takes in two arguments. Let's say define greet, and the first argument is going to be name, and the second argument is going to be age. Okay, let's put a colon there. And now I'm just going to simply print out the name and the age of the person with a little sentence to match it. So let's say print, I'm going to do some string formatting here, and I'm going to say hello, and now I will put their name in, and let's say your age is age. Let's put a full stop here. Okay, there's our function. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this function and I'm going to pass in the keyword arguments. So I'm going to say greet, and let's think of a name, let's just say Alice. Okay, and let's think of an age, let's just put in 32. Okay, and let's hit run. And what are we expecting to see when we run this function? We should see the sentence, hello Alice, your age is 32. And let's see if that's what we get. So let's run this, and that's exactly what we see right here. Cool, so that's working. Now you may have noticed that inside of this function we've basically defined two arguments. What happens if you want more arguments? More specifically, what would happen if we wanted to call this function with a different number of arguments without actually changing the function? So for example, what would happen if I wanted to say greet Alice 32, and let's just say I wanted to say that this person belongs to New York City. What do you think would happen if I tried to run this code? Now, the fact that this part is highlighted, it means that PyCharm has automatically recognized that there's no place for this argument inside this function. So we know we're going to get some kind of error. Let's just see what happens. Okay, the first function call worked absolutely fine, and the second one is complaining. So what is it complaining about? And look at this error over here. It's saying greet, the function takes two positional arguments, but three were given. Which makes sense because we've only allowed this function to take in two arguments, but we've given it three. So how do we solve this problem without having to rewrite this function again so that it can accept three arguments? So let's see how to do that. Okay, I'm going to comment this out, and let's write a new function now. So let's say define, I'm going to call this, I don't know, display arguments. And now we are going to put in Kwargs. And this is where the magic happens, and you have to put the double asterisk here. In fact, what you put after the double asterisk doesn't really matter. You can call this ABC. That's not important. What's important is that whatever you call it, it has to be backed up by the double asterisk here. So I'm going to stick with a convention and call this Kwargs. Okay, and the way Kwargs works is basically every name and value that you give inside of this function when you call it, it's going to assign that name and value to a dictionary item. And as we know, dictionaries in Python work with a key and a value. So when you give it the name of the variable, that's going to be the key. And when you pass in the value of the variable, that value is going to be the value of that key inside the dictionary. So I'm just simply going to loop through the dictionary that we make when we call this function. I'm going to say for key value in Kwargs.items, I'm just going to say print. Let's print the key, and let's also print, let's also print value, and say this is going to be value. Awesome. Now let's try to call this function with some arguments here. Let's say display args, and let's try again. Name, we're going to say is Alice, and age is equal to 32. Now notice we've just put keyword arguments here. We've not told it that we want 1, 2, 3. We have not specified a number of arguments, and that's where the power of this comes. So let's run this and see what happens. So it's gone through the first key and value pair, and it's gone through the second one. And of course we can call this function with as many arguments as we want. So let's just copy this. I'm going to say name, and let's also say city is equal to New York. And let's comment this one out so it doesn't get confusing. And let's run this. And here we go. So it's basically looped through our dictionary that we've created when we passed in these function arguments. And it's created, it's gone through it and told us what each key value pair is. And it looks like I made a typo over here. That should be name. So let's run that again. And there we go. Name, age, city. Perfect. Before we finish up, I just want to show you how you can combine compulsory arguments like these two over here. So these two have to be passed into the function. How you can combine compulsory arguments or positional arguments together with keyword arguments, because that's where the true power of keyword arguments lies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of this. And let's get rid of this. And let's define a new function now that's going to sort of combine the two concepts we've looked at previously. So let's say define. And let's just create a user profile. So let's create profile here. And I want to start by giving this function two arguments that we are always going to pass in. So when you create the profile of a person, you're probably going to want the username and email. So these two are compulsory. Every time we call this function, we have to at least pass in the username and email. Otherwise, this function won't work. But we want to allow the user to have the freedom to pass in more arguments if they want to. And that's exactly where we're going to use keyword arguments. So let's put Kwargs here. And I'm going to create a dictionary now. So I'm going to say the profile is equal to this dictionary. And the first key is going to be the username, because that's going to be the first variable that gets passed in. So the first key is username. And the value is, well, the username variable. Oops, username. Okay, and the same thing for the second one, which is email. So the second item can be email, and the value can be email. And that is our dictionary. But what we want to do now is we want a way for Python to be able to add in any further dictionary items that might be passed in when the user gives keyword arguments. So how do we do that? Well, it's actually pretty easy. We can use the same loop that we used over here, but instead of printing, we're just going to attach it to the existing profile dictionary. So let's see how that works. I'm going to say for key value in keyword arguments dot items, because what we want to do now is we want to take the keyword arguments that have been passed in, and we want to take their items, basically the key and value pairs. Okay, and all we need to do is we're going to say profile. So we are now accessing the dictionary that we've previously made, and we're going to add to it a new key, and the key is going to be the key that has been passed in from the keyword argument, and the value is simply going to be the corresponding value. And of course we can return the profile dictionary so we can take a look at it. Alright, so let's see how this works. I'm going to call this function now. Let's say create profile. Let's give it a username. I don't know. Let's just say Bob123. A very creative username. And the email, let's say info at, I don't know, bobscandystore.com. And as a keyword argument, I want to pass in the city. So we need to say city is equal to New York. Okay, and it looks like I forgot a comma. Excuse me. And what I will do is I will assign this to a variable. So I'll say profile is equal to create profile, and then let's print profile over here. Perfect. And here the output shows us that we've basically combined positional arguments or compulsory arguments with optional keyword arguments. And that's it. That's basically how you use keyword arguments inside of Python. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe for more Python programming tutorials. Alright, thanks for watching and happy coding!